See if you're waking up to some money made or money lost. 22 minutes after 6 o'clock. The JSE closing out yesterday, and let's look at the markets today, what the expectation is there, and some concerns with global counterparts. Let's unpack what that all means. Martin Smith from eNCA Capital joining us again this morning. Hello, Martin. Good to have you back with us. We're going to bring up the commodities and currencies in a moment. If you can, just give me your sense then. What are we waking up to JSE-wise? Because I imagine we're all watching gold and oil very carefully, aren't we, Martin? Morning.
Good morning. No, absolutely. And I think we saw a lot of red on the screen yesterday, and that continued into last night's session in the States, and again this morning in Asia, in the Asian market. So, going to be a bit of red on the screen this morning, and I think risk-off sentiment continues for a little bit.
When we start looking at the oil price as well, which we're about to bring up, the Brent crude price, there's this concern and a bit of confusion. Just want to get your thoughts quickly. Could we see, where are we now? I'm seeing 91.53, 1.8% up. I'm sure your numbers are slightly more up to date. Ours are about 15 minutes behind. But could we see a shock in the oil price? Because obviously we're all very worried about the fuel price increases, aren't we?
Absolutely, because you've obviously got that kind of knock-on effect from an inflationary perspective, kind of at the headline and in the core kind of numbers, but also kind of in your everyday fuel prices, food prices and the like. So there's a couple of things at play. You've seen the oil price move quite sharply upwards over the last few months, but there are still some concerns around demand, which could dampen that oil price. But I think the thing that's coming through at the moment is the conflict in the Middle East and what that's going to do to oil supply and how that'll obviously then impact oil on a higher level.
All right, let's take a quick look at currencies. We're going to talk companies news in a moment. Currencies for us as well. Here it is. The rand has been fairly resilient. The last couple of days we've been told it's a weaker dollar, but the rand is holding stable. But now we're seeing we're back over 1903. What's happening? Any weakness in the rand we should be looking out for?
I think it's still very much a dollar story and an emerging market / risk-off story. So you've got this higher for longer rhetoric coming out of the States, which means you've got a stronger dollar, but then you've also got things like the crisis in the Middle East that's also playing on sentiment, and emerging markets kind of getting caught up in that, specifically South Africa. So I think it's a little bit of both, but predominantly stronger dollar as the place to go when the yields are good and there's a bit of risk aversion around the world.
Oh, I do not want to be a shareholder in Pick n Pay this morning. Martin, dropping 13%. This is the stuff of nightmares. What's happening with Pick n Pay?
So, we got the results yesterday. It's quite interesting because they were quite well flagged so far as the numbers to expect. So obviously the numbers were very disappointing, but very much in line with the trading statement that we got a couple of weeks ago, which we also then saw quite a sharp sell-off. It just comes down to, I think, Pick n Pay trying to have a little bit of a turnaround story, do things that maybe their competitors are doing a little bit better than them. But in essence, they're also operating in a very, very tough environment. As you're well aware, it's very difficult for consumers out there. We've got a lot of headwinds in South Africa from an economic perspective. So operating in a tough environment, you've also got this kind of added thing of load shedding and how that's impacting. And I think they're trying to turn around that story and get themselves back on track in a very, again, very, very tough environment.
And we remember EOH, of course, well-known company EOH. A while ago, they were looking to start reducing their debt as well. It seems to be working, I would imagine. The books are obviously looking good, but now we're seeing that they're also reporting an increase in their profits. So whatever they're doing, the Jenga pieces they're moving around are keeping the tower up and keeping the tower growing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the numbers that came out yesterday, probably in line with what the market was expecting. It's a very, very different business to what it was 3, 4, 5 years ago. They're downscaling, they're reducing debt, they had their rights issue, and they're just trying to kind of sell non-core assets and focus on the things they're focusing on. So I think they're still continuing down that path. And again, very, very different business to what it was. And again, just downscaling, getting debt sorted, and just focusing on the things that they're doing at the moment. And it is working, and let's see how that continues over the coming years.
Changes, though. Stefan van Coller going to be stepping down. I'm seeing the reports of the CEO as well. It's an odd time because he's just been guiding the ship out of this debt issue which they've been dealing with. The numbers are moving in the right direction as well. What do you make of his legacy? Why walk away now? What have you heard?
Well, I think it's also just a function of he's been there for 5 years. He's going to stay for another 6 months. But I think he's done very well to turn things around there. Like I mentioned, he had a big rights issue, got the company through. You spoke about debts. When he came in, I think debt was either about 4 billion rand at a net debt level. It's now about 683 million rand. So he's done a very good job in reducing that. He's turned things around and just making it easier for the new person to come in. So I think a good legacy insofar as what he's done at EOH.
Just in the last 30 seconds or so I have with you, Martin, just who are you looking at today? Who's a good stock we should be following? What's Martin looking for this Thursday?
Again, I think we're going to open up to a sea of red, unfortunately. But the one that I do like at the moment is British American Tobacco. I think nice dividend yield in hard currency, looking relatively cheap, and probably not facing or shielded somewhat from the SA headwinds that we are facing at the moment. So British American Tobacco, but I wouldn't be in a massive rush in this market. I think we'll see a little bit of risk off today.
All right, Martin Smith, as always, from eNCA Capital. Good to have you with us, just unpacking the markets for us.
Thank you.
There you have it. Don't tell us that we never give you some great advice here on the show as well, because of getting someone like Martin on. A little bit of stock advice, maybe if you're into the stocks, into the markets, now you know what to look for, what to avoid a little bit later. It's our pleasure. It's what we do for you on the show.